Hospital beds are filling, hundreds have already become ill, and lawsuits against Kirkland Foods, a division of Costco, are mounting. Even Elon Musk is now cautioning that what you believe to be a good deal could turn out to be a ticking time bomb. How can a company that established its reputation on trust and affordability offer goods that are tainted with chemicals, pesticides, and other contaminants at levels that no family should have to deal with? Although Kirkland's gleaming labels suggest that their products are safe and organic, the evidence of hardship and shortcuts that put millions of people in peril may be found behind each carton, bottle, or pack of meat. Should we still assume that it is innocuous if Elon Musk, a man who is preoccupied with the future of humanity, publicly warns against purchasing these 8 Kirkland Foods? Or are we deceiving ourselves by accepting poison disguised as deals? The truth becomes personal in this devastating story. Today we dispel the myth and reveal 8 Kirkland Foods that you shouldn't purchase from Costco. Let's get started. 1. At Costco, Kirkland shrimp is just placed neatly behind the icy glass. False promises cause the Kirkland shrimp bag to inflate like a balloon. Shoppers are whispered to by the vibrant colors, patriotic logos, and that frozen shine. Plenty, cheap, and safe. Let's be brutally honest though. How many times have you looked at that bag, had a nagging thought, and then thrown it in the basket because, well, your paycheck won't go any farther, the car needs gas, and the rent is due? This shrimp is an inexpensive bet where you, the client, are set up to lose and the house always wins. Why do we still have to choose between potentially harmful and expensive food? The warning has already been posted by the Food and Drug Administration. Chloramphenicol and nitrofurazone were frequently detected in shipments from Bangladesh, India, and Vietnam, all of which supply Kirkland. Because of how harmful such chemicals are, American farmers is prohibited from using them. More than 3,000 lines of imported shrimp from these countries were intercepted in 2023 alone. It turns out that they are all known carcinogens and are connected to bone marrow failure. The next time you put a shrimp into cocktail sauce, keep that in mind. You are tasting the gradual deterioration of your body, not the seasoning. What chance does a person with fragile health have against such vicious toxins? And with the facts piling up higher than the shelves in their warehouse, how can anyone defend Costco? However, poison is just the beginning. The harsh reality of the product's labor is revealed when you dig deeper. According to the Outlaw Ocean Project's investigations, trafficking workers and even miners labor 16-hour shifts at shrimp plants in Thailand, another Kirkland supplier. Imagine a 12-year-old who sleeps on concrete and hasn't had a complete meal in days consuming the shrimp you ate last week via their raw, chemically burned fingertips. Despite this, Costco responds with the business equivalent of a shrug, claiming that ethics are important to them. It would be like to a fox claiming to treat chickens seriously while standing in a henhouse. Although technically correct, it's for the wrong reasons. The threat of radiation now looms over the seas as if that weren't enough. Traces of cesium-137 have contaminated seafood sources in Taiwan and Indonesia since the Fukushima wastewater leak in Japan in 2024. Even worse, shops are not required by U.S. law to disclose the precise ponds or areas where mixed seafood comes from. Therefore, you are purchasing uncertainty when you pick up that Kirkland bag. Would you consent to being blindfolded, twirled, and instructed to choose between uranium stew and soup? But that game is exactly what every walk down the freezer aisle is. The harsh reality is that the majority of shoppers are already aware of the risk. They carry that uneasiness with them as they see headlines and hear whispers. They still purchase, nevertheless. Why? Because when insulin, rent, and gas bills are at the door, $14.99 for 2 pounds feels like survival. Costco has indoctrinated us into believing that purchasing in bulk is safe, but the true expense is hidden in medical bills. Why didn't a 2021 contaminated shrimp outbreak spark enough anger to tighten this system of indifference when it hospitalized 6 Americans and infected scores more? Are we holding off on waking up till the body count increases? However, there are alternatives, even though they frequently go unnoticed. Blue House Farms in Florida produce traceable, antibiotic-free shrimp. Whole Foods Wild Patagonia red shrimp taste like the uncontaminated ocean waters that haven't been contaminated by industrial ponds. Without the toxins and child labor, even plant-based alternatives like the plant-based seafood cartridge or good catch, are a taste explosion. And isn't it time to start asking ourselves if it's worth sacrificing our children's safety and health to save a few dollars? Or is it time to see past the frozen glass and acknowledge that the most poisonous element of all is silence? The shrug, the teask, and the one more time won't hurt. 2. Kirkland Almond Milk. Almond milk cartons appear so innocent. Slim, beige, and emblazoned with claims such as plant-based and organic. It seems like the safest option to many, a method of lowering cholesterol, avoiding dairy, or protecting the heart. Costco has succeeded in making health itself a bulk deal, which only serves to increase the temptation in Kirkland's version. However, every smooth flow conceals a sharp edge. This isn't a compassionate beverage. It is a silent robbery of resources that the majority of Americans never consented to lose, a burden on laborers, and a drain on waterways. It takes more than 100 gallons of water to make 1/2 gallon of almond milk, which contains the essence of more than 80 almonds. Kirkland pushed. Deeply ingrained in the Central Valley of California, suppliers are accused of extracting an estimated 1.2 billion gallons of groundwater annually, which is sufficient to provide drinking water for 20,000 people. Costco's cartons go seamlessly from drought-stricken farms into warehouses, while regular Californian households have been advised to take a shower for 4 minutes, or penalized for watering their lawns. If this disparity doesn't make your neck tighten, consider how long a state can last when the milk of one corporation is worth more than the blood of its citizens. However, the story is not just about thirst. 16 seasonal workers' affidavits, which described pesticide exposure, unpaid wages, and severe reprisal, came to light in 2021. A 67-year-old employee suffered from acute respiratory failure when chemicals were poured on him without any protection, scorching his lungs. He survived, but he was unemployed and had medical debt that would probably outlive him. When you multiply his narrative by thousands of unknown hands, that creamy glass starts to resemble liquid exploitation rather than health. Why should a retired person unwittingly consume the pain of another guy while drinking unsweetened organic? The label is the cruelest deceit. Although Kirkland takes pride in its USDA organic designation, processors are exempt from tracking down farm-level labor and water practices due to regulatory limitations. Everything else, including the stolen water, the wounded lungs, and the buried scandals, remains invisible as long as the almond passes the chemical test. Customers are thus duped into thinking the milk is pure, when in fact, it has only been cleaned of impurities. The cracks are now getting wider. Costco is under pressure to provide its sourcing maps, because to a 2025 lawsuit in California. The consequences might jolt shelves across America if judges order the business to disclose aquifer depletion in prohibited areas. Imagine headlines announcing ecological crimes rather than bacterial recalls. Imagine if Kirkland's almond milk disappeared overnight, leaving consumers to stare at empty cartons. Might legal actions and environmental protests escalate until almond milk emerges as the next big thing in tobacco? Is it socially poisonous but legal? Or will customers continue to drink when the fields dry up? Thus, the decision ends up in your kitchen. Because the price tag fits your pension, you can continue to pour from a container associated with drought and sadness. Or you can shift your focus to companies who use regenerative farming and safeguard their employees, like 3 Trees or Malk Organics. Making your own is much easier. All you need is a blender, a handful of almonds, and 10 minutes. Or go farther. With 90% less water used, sunflower milk promises a time when drinking won't make you feel guilty. Let's not fool ourselves, though. Which milk to use isn't the main question. The question is whether we will continue to permit businesses to exploit our humanity and resources in order to make money. What if every swallow is more about someone else's debt or drought than it is about your health? Will Costco be the one who is thirsty when the glass is dry? Or will you be the one? The third item is Kirkland ground beef. It glows red like a sign of strength as it sits in Costco's coolers. A guarantee that you can still provide a family with wholesome protein, regardless of how limited your budget is. Kirkland's ground beef has become a staple in daily dinners. Meatloaf that lasts all week, casseroles that feed the grandchildren, and burgers that sizzle on the grill. In its banality, it seems almost sacrosanct. However, that red gleam is a cover-up. Beneath the plastic is meat that has been contaminated, handled haphazardly, and linked to outbreaks that have killed and sickened hundreds of people. Already, families have been sent to funerals by the very food that was supposed to nourish them. After Salmonella poisoned 246 individuals in 26 states in 2019, Costco's supplier, JBS Tolleson, recalled about 40,000 pounds of ground beef. None of the four of them ever got home. Children and the elderly, who were least able to withstand the hit, made up the majority of the victims. Additionally, Kirkland ground beef was not discontinued until Costco was compelled to do so by federal regulators. Before the alert went off, how many additional people consumed tainted beef? Kirkland Beef's technology is a machine that moves too quickly for safety. Up to 400 cows are processed per hour in slaughterhouses, with carcasses smashing like vehicles on a highway pileup. Thousands of pounds are instantly affected when one contaminated animal comes into contact with another. Fecal matter was discovered on up to 3% of carcasses during random checks, according to a USDA inspector who later came forward as a whistleblower. When you consider that 3% is equivalent to hundreds of pounds of dung being subtly incorporated into your burgers, it seems insignificant. How many families sat around the table grinning at their food without seeing that it was tainted with dirt? Although Costco claims to have strict safety procedures, the situation is dire. Not every pound is tested, batches are. If one random sample is found to be clean, a contaminated lot may pass through. It's roulette, not supervision. Additionally, the chamber contains E rather than bullets. The bacteria E. coli-01-H7 can destroy kidneys in both young and old people. Physicians refer to it as hemolytic uremic syndrome. Families must deal with dialysis equipment, medical expenses, and the kind of anguish that no amount of money can make up, and it might get worse tomorrow. Major processors, including those connected to Costco, were found to have been incorporating imported beef trim from Uruguay and Brazil into USA-made products in 2024. These imports are from areas plagued by widespread antibiotic abuse, inadequate oversight, and deforestation. When you combine that with America's disjointed inspection system, disaster is inevitable. Recalls, broader outbreaks, and antibiotic-resistant salmonella. How many more headlines before confidence ultimately erodes? However, millions continue to purchase Kirkland ground beef because in a time when every penny counts, $4.99 per pound seems like salvation. It wouldn't be on the shelf if it were really so harmful, you convince yourself. However, brand reputations do not cure renal disease, and logos do not eradicate microorganisms. The unspoken reality is that a lot of families purchase it because they feel compelled to do so, rather than because they trust it. However, there is a way out. Traceability from farm to packaging is offered by regional cooperatives such as Strauss Brands and Dakota Grass-Fed Beef. With fewer microbiological problems identified by USDA data, ground turkey like Butterball Naturals is frequently the same price or less for frugal families. Or completely avoid eating meat. You may make tacos, chili, or spaghetti sauce with crumbles made of lentil or lupini without making your dinner table a gambling game. Therefore, think twice before grabbing Kirkland's family pack. Will you continue to gamble with each burger in the hopes that your family doesn't end up as just another statistic? How long until the burden of funerals and medical expenses causes the appearance of savings to crumble? The most terrifying possibility is that the next recall notice, the one linked to kidney failure or worse, may already be silently stored in your freezer at this very moment. Kirkland Cage, free eggs, number 4. Eggs should be associated with Sunday mornings, comfort, golden yolks, and a reliable sense of simplicity. With pictures of chickens wandering across sunny meadows and phrases like humane splattered across the carton, Kirkland cage-free eggs promote that fantasy. However, if you delve deeper, the plot becomes tense. Behind the marketing is a factory system where each egg is valued in terms of danger and suffering rather than money, and cage-free is essentially just legal sleight of hand. The truth about Kirkland's supply chain has been captured on camera by animal protection organizations. Tens of thousands of birds packed into barns, many with festering sores or damaged wings, their beaks trimmed with blades. In a single year, the death rate at one California supplier apparently exceeded 12%. Tens of thousands of hens are slowly dying, and occasionally their remains are left to rot amid the living. Is that a brilliant rebranding of cruelty, or does it sound like freedom? More than 1,500 Americans were eliminated by a Salmonella outbreak from cage-free eggs in 2021, with almost 400 of them being admitted to the hospital. Because Salmonella can spread to the blood and cause death, elderly patients are particularly at risk. The majority of you entered type mortality. Costco conceals itself behind outside vendors, but because supply chains are opaque and checks are infrequent, every Kirkland egg is a random chance. What occurs when the odds are in your favor? The treachery is exacerbated by politics. While marketing to consumers the idea of greater welfare, Kirkland suppliers have spent hundreds of thousands fighting against stricter cage-free regulations. Millions of families pay into that system, thinking their money is promoting change, but in reality, they are subsidizing resistance. It's the food industry's equivalent of a car dealer boasting about safety while opposing seatbelts. The future appears much more bleak. Industry sources say that as suppliers rush to replace lost production, barns will become tighter, cleaning cycles shorter, and diseases more prevalent, as avian flu already killed millions of chickens in 2024. Recalls of millions, not thousands, of Kirkland eggs may occur in the future, emptying stores and depriving elderly people who rely on inexpensive protein of safe options. Nevertheless, consumers shrug. Why? Because Kirkland eggs look like a good deal at $7.99, superior than cages. However, the system may never get better because of that compromise. What if each carton you purchase is an endorsement to keep consumers and hens caught in the same deceptive cycle? There are other options. Pasture-raised eggs from vital farms, local farmers markets, or even powdered flaxseed and alternatives that completely avoid the squalor. Will you be providing sustenance when you crack open that Kirkland egg tomorrow morning? Or consuming the misery of another person wholeheartedly? 5. Kirkland Chicken Bake. Kirkland Chicken Bake has the texture of an edible handshake from Costco. Warm, cheesy, and wrapped in foil, this dish lets you know that dinner is taken care of. It's a treat for many working families and seniors after a long day at the warehouse. Or, when energy runs low, the $12.99 frozen box that you put into the oven. What you're chewing into isn't actually chicken covered in dough, though, if you peel back that comfort. Dinner is actually a chemical sponge that has been designed more for shelf life than for your health. The FDA discovered residues of quaternary ammonium compounds, which are chemicals used in poultry factory disinfectants, during spot checks in 2022. The amounts found in processed frozen chicken dinners, such as Kirkland's Chicken Bake, exceeded the safety threshold by more than 3 times. Not all QACs are used as industrial cleansers. Research has connected them to a decrease in fertility, hormonal imbalance, and asthma. Long-term exposure was linked to a 20% increased risk of respiratory disease in one peer-reviewed study. How many elderly people who were already struggling with frail lungs unwittingly breathed in more harm with each bite? The data, even without the cleaning supplies, reveal a story that Costco would prefer to keep hidden. More than 740 calories, 25 grams of fat, and 1,500 milliliters of sodium, 2/3 of the daily salt consumption suggested for seniors, are included in each chicken bake. According to a 2023 study published in the Hypertension Journal, meals containing more than 1,200 milliliters of salt increased older persons' risk of stroke by 34% in just 48 hours. Consider that. Despite being marketed as a safe grab-and-go snack, a single chicken bake can send a retiree straight to the emergency room. The psychology is what exacerbates the hurt. Lean protein comes to mind when you see chicken. You think of bulk value when you see Costco. On the inside, though, it's more chemistry than chicken. Phosphate of sodium to retain water, lactate of potassium for preservation. Nitrates are used to prolong shelf life. The food isn't prepared at home. It is more akin to a pastry-sealed industrial experiment. Even so, consumers still buy it because when gas, rent, and prescription drugs already consume their paychecks, convenience feels like survival. What about tomorrow? Industry insiders caution that chicken plants are taking shortcuts as a result of avian flu losses and growing expenses. Shorter cleaning cycles, stronger disinfectants, and even blending in imported trimmings with less supervision. One direction is indicated by the direction: more contaminants, more chemicals, and a higher chance of a recall that comes too late to save the lives of those who relied on that foil-wrapped deal. Consider the news in 2026: tragic frozen dinner. After seniors became ill, Costco recalled millions. It wouldn't be an unexpected disaster. It would be the inevitable outcome of decisions made today. You can avoid falling into the trap. The vegetables and beans used in Amy's kitchen burritos are organic. Fit and Avalon chicken meals include a salt content of less than 600 milliliters and taste like real meal rather like leftover disinfection. Or use rotisserie chicken from a nearby grocer to make a batch of handmade calzones. Freeze them on your own. Cut the gilding and chemicals in half. Whether convenience should be accompanied by risk is the question. Are you consuming comfort food or mop water from a poultry plant disguised as dinner when you open the next chicken bake? 6. Kirkland bottled water. It appears to be innocuous. Seniors and families trust Costco as the least expensive source of safety, and 40 bottles for $3.99 are piled high in Costco carts. However, this is not plastic purity. Invisible pollution and stolen groundwater are being sold back to the original owners. Watchdogs discovered that Kirkland's supplier drew more than 130 million gallons annually from San Bernardino aquifers, while paying only $524 for permits during some of California's worst droughts. Firefighters pleaded for resources, and families were fined for watering their lawns. When your well runs out, picture Costco trucks removing the water, shrink-wrapping it, and then reselling it to you at a premium. Additionally, the water therein is unclean. In 2023, a Columbia University research discovered that bottled water included 240,000 plastic particles per liter. According to consumer claims, Kirkland was contaminated with microplastics. These particles are connected to infertility, hormone disruption, and possibly brain harm, since they are small enough to penetrate blood and organs. Every drink could result in plastic fragments getting into the kidneys and liver of elderly people. The future appears to be worse. In 2025, regulators might cancel pumping licenses, which would cause Kirkland's supply chain to abruptly collapse. Additionally, researchers caution that microplastics may soon be linked to cancer. A Costco case that says this product contains particles known to cause cancer may be opened. Will consumers continue to fill their carts? There are better ways. Contaminants are removed for pennies with a zero water filter. Carton sales from renewable springs are made by Just Water. Additionally, boiling your own tap water in glass bottles is preferable to paying companies to resell what was once yours. It's a straightforward question. Are you satiating your thirst when you drink Kirkland water, or allowing yourself to be exploited? 7. Kirkland Soy Milk. Soy milk has a healthy shine, lower on cholesterol, kinder to aged stomachs, and frequently selected by seniors who want to maintain their strength. Kirkland's famous soy milk depends on that standing. It's organic and comes in a carton, and the price is so low that you feel like Costco is watching out for you. However, there is something much darker underneath the beige pour: pesticide residues, dishonest sourcing, and corporate deception that turns every drink into a risk. In 2020, watchdogs discovered that large foreign processors that supplied Costco were passing off genetically modified soybeans as organic. Nearly 40% of Turkish shipments of organic soy were false, according to a USDA examination conducted in 2021. In 2022, independent labs even detected higher quantities of glyphosate, Monsanto's notorious weed pesticide, in Kirkland's soy milk, 80 parts per billion, than its rivals. Monsanto's $11 billion cancer settlements related to non-Hodgkin lymphoma were largely based on the same chemical. Therefore, your body can be imbibing risk even though the carton exudes purity. There is more to the treachery. Costco advocated against more stringent traceability regulations for imported organics in 2021. Interpretation? Keeping documentation simple means keeping clients in the dark. Cheap, dubious imports were chosen over struggling local soybean producers in the United States. What ought to have been assistance for American farmers instead became financial desertion. What about the future? USDA authorities warn that when demand exceeds supply, bogus organic imports could increase. This implies more GMO beans, more glyphosate, and probably recalls. Imagine 2026 headlines about the organic soy milk recall and the thousands of people exposed if regulators take action. Or even worse, picture the hush as settlements conceal the truth and consumers continue to add it to their morning coffee. There are other options. Elmhurst, which publicly discloses origins, or West Soy Organic, which uses confirmed U.S. beans. Control is even possible with homemade soy milk, which only requires beans, water, and a blender. This is the actual query. For what length of time will organic continue to be a lullaby that conceals treachery in each pore? 8. America's guilty smile has always been Kirkland bacon. On Sunday mornings, they are delicious, crispy, and smoky. Kirkland bacon whispers savings and happiness in its giant packs, which sell that fantasy in quantity. However, beneath the glitz lie chemicals, pollution, and brutality that turn breakfast into treachery. Smithfield Foods, which is controlled by China's WH Group, provides a large portion of Kirkland's bacon. In 2021, investigations revealed mother pigs biting steel bars till their bodies bled while imprisoned in containers so small they couldn't turn around. At some barns, the annual mortality rate exceeded 15%. The bacon flowed, plastic-wrapped in Costco happiness, despite the fact that hundreds of thousands of animals had been killed before being slaughtered. Also, communities pay. Smithfield has been sued for contaminating impoverished, primarily black communities in North Carolina, where pig dung lagoons produce fecal mist clouds. A federal court upheld $94 million in damages for residents who were suffering from chronic illnesses in 2020. Nevertheless, Costco continued to carry Kirkland bacon, causing BLTs to profit off human agony. What about the strips themselves? In 2022, laboratory tests revealed dangerously high amounts of nitrosamines, a substance linked to cancer. According to the WHO, consuming only 2 strips of bacon every day increases the risk of colorectal cancer by 18%. Relying on Kirkland bacon as a cheap source of protein for elderly people on fixed means is trapping, not enjoyment. The future is bleak. Because suppliers are being squeezed by tariffs and financial duress, cost-cutting measures are probably going to result in cleaner farms, more expensive preservatives, and even greater danger. Imagine the headline, Costa Bacon pulled over cancer-causing chemicals. In 2027, will Costco stand up for its customers? Or repackage poison in secret? There are other options. Applegate Naturals and Neiman Ranch sell lower nitrate, humane bacon. Without causing misery to animals or the community, Sweet Earth Tempeh Bacon offers smoky joy. The query persists. Are you smelling breakfast or the silent decay of a system that is deceiving you when you smell that sizzle? The true price of cheap meals is misery that goes unnoticed. Get your voice heard, subscribe now, and demand the truth before it's too late.